We're going to go ahead and get started because I know we're going to have a lot of content to go over in the next hour. I'm sure some people will be joining us as we go, and I'll leave a message up there to make sure that everyone stays muted. First of all, thank you all for joining us. It's great to see such an overwhelming response and people registering for this. It's an important topic, and I'm glad that we're able to cover it. Today we're going to listen to 3 different presenters. We have our very own James Connelly, who is the manager of the Declare program here. He will go over materials a little bit and work your way through the Declare program. And then we're going to pass the presenter off to Scott Miller, who is the Director of Sustainability over at Knauf Insulation, who's been active in ensuring and promoting sustainable development with a special interest in the value of energy efficiency, fair and balanced performance within all genres of insulation products. After Scott presents, we're going to be passing the control over to Brent, who is the Director of Sustainability with GreenWizard, and he's going to take you through the products and implementation of their particular tools that they use. So with that, we're passing the ball off to James, and we'll get started. Again, if you have any questions throughout, we will be going over those at the end of the webinar, and you can direct those to myself, Anna Hennege, and I will compile those, and we will address those at the end. So James, it's off to you.
All right, well, thank you, Anna, I likewise am pretty excited to see the amount of interest in this topic of transparency and toxic chemical avoidance in the Declare program, and look forward to walking you guys through the program and then showing a perspective of a manufacturer, and then also showing you how you can use some new database tools created by GreenWizard to meet the requirements of the Living Building Challenge, and how that makes it easier to specify non-toxic products that are willing to be transparent. So first, I'm going to have a quick introduction of the Living Building Challenge program. The Living Building Challenge is a green building certification program. So similar to LEED, it's a green building certification program. However, the Living Building Challenge is really modeled after nature as the ideal measuring stick of performance in the built environment. So a living building, like a flower, is rooted in place, yet it harvests all its energy and its water on site. It's adapted to its climate and site. It operates completely pollution-free. It's comprised of integrated systems, and what we think is actually a critical component of sustainability that often gets lost in the conversation is we also require living buildings or design living buildings to be beautiful. And sustainability tends to sort of ignore beauty as a critical aspect. However, the things with which society values and protects and treasures over time, so those are buildings that last and are important fixtures of their community, are also beautiful. So we think that's an important part of our program and distinguishes it from a lot of other green building certification programs. For the purposes of this conversation, I think it's also important to point out that most flowers and most things in nature are also made of natural, non-toxic materials. So to put the Living Building Challenge in context for the market a little bit, what we're really trying to accomplish with this program is move the conversation past how can we make a building less bad to how we can actually create a building that has a restorative and positive impact on environment and society. So specifically for energy, that means not only something that's above code and 50% more energy efficient, we want to design buildings that are actually feeding energy back into the grid through their own renewable powered energy systems. We want to design buildings that are not only less likely to give you cancer and asthma and cause sick building syndrome, but are literally, it is impossible to get cancer from these buildings because they're made of completely non-toxic materials. And using materials that are actually rooted in the economy and the local community, so that they're actually helping to cause economic transformation in each one of their communities. So that's really how the Living Building Challenge is situated. And one of the metaphors that we like to use is embracing the psychology of the end game and the metaphor of Roger Bannister. Roger Bannister was a physician and an athlete, a runner, at a time when it was believed that it was physically impossible, and there are actually medical articles written that it was physically impossible for a human being to run a mile faster than 4 minutes. However, Roger Bannister was able to demonstrate it's possible. And once he did it, once he broke that mental barrier that we had as a society, people followed quickly after him. And now, in fact, high school runners in the United States often break the 4-minute mark. So it just shows that often we place these limitations upon ourselves, and if once we're able to move the mileposts a little bit and break through, then we can really cause transformation in the way that we're thinking about the built environment. And we'll give a few examples of that with product manufacturers as we go through the rest of this presentation. So in 2006, when the Living Building Challenge was launched, it was launched with a red list, a list of toxic chemicals to avoid. Our project teams went out. Now, as Brett will show in a chart later, we have over 190 projects all over the world. As our project teams went out trying to find non-toxic materials that complied with the red list requirements, they ran into serious challenges in the market. In fact, we found that manufacturers and specifiers weren't speaking the same language, and often manufacturers didn't even have the information available to answer the questions about the toxicity of their products being asked by our project teams. Now, with the launch of Declare, the new transparency credits within LEED v4, new tools like GreenWizard that we're going to be talking about later, there's new tools to communicate between project teams and manufacturers, making meeting the red list easier. So I'm going to go through a little bit of a story, kind of tracing from the launch of the red list to now and the new tools available as we go through this presentation. So like I said, when the Living Building Challenge was launched in 2006, with the red list, it was an incredible challenge for project teams to be able to find and specify appropriate materials. The red list is composed of persistent, bioaccumulative, and toxic chemicals. So these are products or materials and compounds and chemicals that are pervasive in building products, and then also have a tendency to build up in the ecosystem and increase in concentration as they reach higher order life forms. One example that really struck home for me, and I think everybody sort of has this kind of touch point of story that they heard about that really made them care about this issue of toxicity, was orca whales in Washington State. Orca whales have some of the highest concentration of flame retardants of any creature on the planet. And flame retardants, as we'll talk about later, are ingredients that are common in building materials. They're in all building insulation, and they're often in a lot of interior products to protect against fire. These chemicals are persistent, bioaccumulative, and build up in the orca whales to the point that female orca whales, when they have their first child, actually download those toxins into their first child, which extends the lifespan of female orca whales to almost twice that of male orca whales. So they are literally, their first child becomes a repository or download for all those persistent bioaccumulative toxic chemicals. And as we'll discuss later, often these chemicals are not required or are unnecessary. And as we shed light and transparency, we can begin moving past them into healthier product formulations. So here's the Living Building Challenge red list in full. I think there's a lot of things people will recognize on here. Halogenated flame retardants, polyvinyl chloride, phthalates, asbestos. And again, all these chemicals and chemical groups have toxicity issues, in particular focusing on persistent bioaccumulative toxic chemicals. So like I said, there was disconnect when teams went out and tried to talk to manufacturers about how to find non-toxic products. One of those main disconnects is those 13 chemicals are actually 13 chemical groups representing 362 unique chemical CAS numbers. CAS numbers are sort of like a fingerprint for chemicals, and each chemical compound can be assigned a chemical CAS number, which will allow communication between a supplier and a manufacturer to be ensured you're talking about the exact same ingredient. So our project teams went out, they discovered that actually it's much more complicated. Those 13 chemical groups represent 362 unique chemicals and aliases. And another challenge that our project teams found was when you actually started asking manufacturers where their products were made, it's really, really difficult to find locally sourced products. A great example of this is the carpet industry. In fact, in the United States, almost all, and I was recently down in Dalton, Georgia, so it was pretty cool to see this in person. Almost everywhere you go, there's some type of carpet manufacturing company or dealer. So almost all production of carpet in the U.S. is outside of Atlanta, or actually more to the point, Dalton, Georgia. I was excited because I found one product, Bentley Mills, that was made in the City of Industry, California. However, every single ingredient in that product came from Dalton, Georgia. So I think it just goes to show how far we need to go in order to transform our economy to allow us to locally source products close to home. So the next part of the talk is with the rise of the transparency movement and Declare and all these other tools, all of a sudden meeting the red list requirements and meeting those appropriate sourcing requirements are becoming easier. So what Declare is it's really an ingredients label for building products, just like a nutrition facts for food. In a simple, clear, easy to read graphical format, it lists the ingredients in a building product and where they're coming from, as well as highlighting whether or not they're toxic chemicals, which allows consumers to begin making informed decisions about which products they want to be using. So it's an ingredients label for building products. It's an endeavor to increase the availability of information and provide transparency in the building marketplace. It's an opportunity for manufacturers to connect to project teams, and it's a support resource for our project teams. It was really created out of this need from our project teams to be able to find compliant materials. So it forms a database of kind of ready-made compliant materials with the Living Building Challenge program. Declare works by answering 3 simple questions. Where does a product come from? What is it made of? And where does it go at the end of its life? So I referenced something like a nutrition label before. I think the same thing that's happening, or happened rather, in the food labeling industry is now taking hold in the building product marketplace. You know, I think all of us understand or would agree that it's a little bit ridiculous for a ketchup manufacturer to claim that the ingredients that they're using in the food product that you're buying from them are quote-unquote proprietary. But in fact, there was a time when food product manufacturers did make this claim, and they believed that their formulations and all the ingredients they were using in their product were secret and couldn't be supplied to the market. Then food labeling laws came along, there was consumer demand, there was a movement to clean up commercial food production, and that transparency has led to better practices and healthier products over time. I think it's about time in the building product industry, as consumers, we begin to demand that same level of information and disclosure as we do with our food. We're coming in contact with buildings all the time. They're off-gassing into our environment. We need to know, and manufacturers should be willing to provide that necessary information so we can make good decisions about what healthy materials to use in our homes and our businesses. So here's a close-up of the Declare label. If you look, it provides the end-of-life options for a product. It provides a declare identifier, which is a unique number that you can use to submit for Living Building Challenge certification. The ingredients are color-coded, so red ingredients are on the red list, orange ingredients are on EPA chemicals of concern, or rather action plan published list, or the REACH substances of very high concern. There's a zone designation, so you understand where a product's coming from and how far it needs to be sourced to meet LBC criteria. And then it also has temporary exceptions applied. So it's taking that ingredient information and putting the filter of the Living Building Challenge and making it a quick and easy reference for teams to decide which products they want to buy. So there's 3 declaration status options. You can see them at the bottom of the label down here. And so the first one is red list free. And so what that means is that a product has all its ingredients fully disclosed and none of them are on the red list. Red list compliant means at least 99% of ingredients are disclosed. One of those ingredients is on the red list, but there is a temporary exception applied. An example is we allow phenol formaldehyde within the Living Building Challenge for structural composite wood. Currently, there's really not market availability for a product that doesn't use phenol formaldehyde that has structural performance characteristics. So we create an exception, though over time we want to remove these exceptions as new formulations and new green chemistry initiatives come on the market. The last piece is declared. And so we also want to reward manufacturers, even if they still have a red list ingredient, it doesn't meet an LBC temporary exception, we still want to reward them for their willingness to be transparent and participate in the program. So the label holds kind of the clear graphical simplified representation of the product, but on the declare backside in the database, for those of us who are kind of chemistry nerds, you can actually go in, dig down, and look at all the chemical CAS numbers and the breakdown of all the ingredients in a declare product. So I think this really provides that second level of detailed technical information that's useful for those of us who are a little bit more in the know and a little bit more involved in the transparency movement. So often one of the questions we get is, should I do declare or should I do HPD? And in fact, we have a partnership with the Health Product Declaration, and we use the HPD's reporting format. So in a way, Health Product Declaration is, as a standard, is setting a common way in which ingredients are reported and sets definitions around things like what is an ingredient and how is it defined. So we adopt the Health Product Declaration standards reporting format within the Declare program, and we align the programs in that way. And in fact, we have an agreement with them where the first 30 products who had a complete and fully disclosed HPD could take the next step and participate and declare and overlay the Living Building Challenge information that Declare provides and have that simple, easy, graphical representation of products that manufacturers could use to connect to either LBC projects or other specifiers who are interested in sustainability. So Declare's role in the market, right now there's lots of different programs. There's Pharos, which is a great partner of the Living Building Challenge and the Declare program. There's the Cradle to Cradle program and the Health Product Declaration program. And really all these programs are accomplishing a couple things. One, they're increasing the level of information and transparency provided to the market, and then they're helping signal to manufacturers toxic chemicals that should be avoided and how products should be reformulated in the future. All of these programs begin with a basic ingredients list. They all start with a manufacturer putting together a list of all the ingredients in their product, and then assessing it versus various hazard lists. So we encourage manufacturers to take advantage of all these programs. And in fact, we think that all these programs have great attributes and are useful ways for manufacturers to look at their products and to evaluate them and to connect to markets. Where we see Declare is one is that resource for Living Building Challenge projects, and then also is that way to communicate graphically in a simple, easy way what's in a product to help consumers make decisions. I'd like to talk about a couple successes that have happened after the launch of the Living Building Challenge and other associated initiatives in 2006. So the first is I want to talk about formaldehyde. It's pretty exciting to see formaldehyde emissions have declined over 80% from 2005 to 2010. It could be seen as a result of LEED credits targeting formaldehyde and composite wood. There was a Healthy Building Network campaign. The Living Building Challenge launched a red list in 2006. And then finally, regulation took hold, and the California Air Resource Board launched maximum concentrations or limits on the amount of formaldehyde that composite wood could emit. And I think an exciting product that you guys are going to hear about later that was really a big part of this story is Knauf's EcoBat insulation. So instead of using formaldehyde, now they use dextrose, which is literally sugar. And what's kind of incredible to me is why were we ever using a toxic chemical like formaldehyde when we could be using sugar all along? Another example is arsenic. Arsenic is a common wood preservative treatment. And arsenic use has declined from over 20 tons in 2003, and this is imports into the United States, 20 tons in 2003 to 6 in 2012. So there was a Healthy Building Network campaign about this. There was Pharos uncovering a lot of the chemistry. There was the Living Building Challenge Red List launched in 2006. And then finally there was an EPA order addressing arsenic directly. And so one of the products that we work with in the Declare program is vinegar. Is actually Akoya wood, which uses vinegar instead of arsenic as a wood preservative treatment, working just as well. And I think these are two great examples of how the Declare program and the power of the Declare program. As consumers, we intuitively know that sugar and vinegar are better ingredients in building products than formaldehyde and arsenic. And as we become aware of that information, it's presented to us in a way that we can make good decisions, we're going to begin to move the market. Another couple examples, the Living Building Challenge was applied for the Bullitt Center. It's a project in Seattle. This project team, it's a 50,000 square foot commercial building in Seattle. This project team was looking for an air barrier system. They really wanted to use a product called Fast Flash by Prosoco. They contacted them. Prosoco let them know they have a red list ingredient. They said, okay, well, we're not going to be able to use your product. Thanks for your honesty. And Prosoco went back and instead of just saying, okay, dang, we lost this job, they went back and actually reformulated the product, removing the phthalate that was originally in it, and then applying that across the product line. So if you buy this product, Prosoco Fast Flash, now it's completely phthalate free. And it's interesting to note that there's some recent research coming out on phthalate's effects on male fertility. As you can see from this image and also probably out in the field, the people who are actually at risk of exposure to phthalates who are applying Fast Flash to building are almost 100% men, and it's really male fertility that phthalates affect. So this company was really able to take the next step and remove the ingredient and actually protect these workers' health in the long run. Another great example of how the Living Building Challenge and this platform has been able to cause transformation is the windows used on the Bullitt Center. The windows were made in their triple paned aluminum frame, thermally broken, extremely high performance windows with an operable function, as you can see where they open directly out. They were critical to the net zero energy strategy of the Bullitt Center, and they really wanted to use these windows. However, they were only made by a German company called Schuco. So Schuco actually moved production and worked with a local company in Seattle to bring the windows over here locally and fabricate them. And now they sell these windows all up and down the West Coast, and in fact have pioneered a new business model where they license the technology to local operators. So this is another example of how the Living Building Challenge, again, is moving beyond doing less bad and actually helping to cause positive economic transformations in communities. One thing I haven't talked about a lot yet is currently in the building product marketplace and much more in 2006, there's a issue with transparency. Manufacturers claim often that the ingredients in their products are proprietary and that to disclose them would put their company at risk. You know, and I actually, when I first launched this program, the Declare program, in October 2012, I had a conversation with a manufacturer who I count as a good friend, and he told me, look, James, I want to participate in this program. We're on board with transparency, but I have to think about the worker on the factory floor. And I thought that was actually pretty important for me to address and to consider. I didn't want to be operating a program, and we didn't want to be operating a program that was driving great manufacturers out of business. And so I took a look at the academic literature, and actually there's an overwhelming amount of evidence, and this particular graphic is adopted from an article in Strategic Management Journal that shows that transparency and embracing sustainability are the pathway to long-term sustainable financial performance. So if you look at this chart, financial performance is on the left-hand side, social and environmental performance is on the bottom. What the literature tells us is that companies that do very little, they do a little bit of work, or what we would call greenwashing, don't really see a good financial benefit. However, companies that are able to embrace transparency as a way to connect to their stakeholders so that they're getting feedback from the market, you know, they're working with NGOs and partners to determine what toxic chemicals they need to address in the future and remove from their products, and are using it as a way to create a market advantage, are actually the best financial performing companies out there. The companies that don't do a lot still do okay financially, but what they have is regulatory risk. And as soon as CARB regulations or EPA orders come down the line, they're going to be forced to reformulate their product at great expense, and then they'll be behind the rest of the market. So I would like to conclude kind of with two calls to action, if you will. The first one is a call to action for manufacturers. Those of you who are on the line, embrace transparency to get out ahead of the curve. This is a way to reduce regulatory risk in the long run, also to create healthier products. The red list can be used internally for product development, although it can also be used with the Declare program. And I would also encourage you to take advantage of Declare and HPD to connect to new markets, as well as list products in transparency databases like GreenWizard and GreenSpec. And I think that this is important because right now we're sort of at an inflection point, I believe, where we're now at by May 21st, we'll have over 100 Declare products. We're at an inflection point where the market's really starting to shift, and it's critical for manufacturers to jump on board and begin to get out ahead of the curve. For specifiers, my call to action would be join the transparency movement and use your purchasing power to drive market transformation towards healthier products. So just specifying red list free products, pursuing the Living Building Challenge, educating your clients about the importance of transparency and toxic chemical avoidance is critical, and then requesting manufacturers participate in Declare and HPD. And Brent's going to follow up a little bit on this, on the movement that's afoot right now. And lastly, I would say subscribe and use these new databases that are making it easier to find products and to list products. And I think it's really this technology solution and the shared information in these databases that we're building now that's going to be able to solve the problem in the long run. Okay, so now I'm going to hand it off to Scott Miller from Knauf Insulation, which is one of our partners and has done a pretty incredible job embracing transparency in his business.
Hello. Okay. Let me check something here. There we go. Okay, everybody, thank you. I'm going to talk about Knauf Insulation. I'll go through this pretty quickly. How Declare has really has become part of our sustainable development at Knauf Insulation. You know, currently we maintain several labels for products. You know, today, since marketing has really kicked in, and as creative as marketing is, you know, it used to be green or not green. Now it's green, greener, or greenest. So it really requires us to maintain degrees of labels to, you know, say, to allow us to correctly position our products in the marketplace. And Declare is one of those labels, as well as GreenWizard, who is on this call today too. But Declare largely has become our flagship, and I'll tell you why. If you look at Declare and why Declare, from a manufacturer's perspective in the standard specification process, whereas you write a specification, perhaps, you know, your product is called out, but there are also an approved list of alternatives or substitutes. And, you know, the traditional specification process is really not sustainable development friendly because of that. The product selected is usually the one associated with the lowest bid. Does not mean it's not a sustainable product, but whatever distribution and installation costs were associated with that product, it's related not just to the product, but to the bid process. And the process sometimes sacrifices sustainable development. So the odds of us being potentially selected are like 1-to-1 with Declare, but they might be 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 without it. So why Declare? We want to be associated with perhaps the most sustainable buildings on Earth, the Living Building Challenge buildings. We are an energy efficiency company, and net zero buildings or buildings that sell energy back to the grid are very efficient. So it's very common sense for us. Not just anybody can do a red list free Declare label, and there are 362 reasons why, as James talked about. Being picked because we have sustainability difference supports our sustainable development. And where we are not red list free, it's where we know we have work to do to differentiate those products as well. So the whole Declare process actually supports a market transformation to more sustainable building or better buildings. So we have a number of products that are on the Declare list. I think we have 8, you know, soon to be 10. And we have made this a platform to declare our difference. It is our flagship label. And one of the reasons why is it really supports our public product stewardship message. And you know, we have nine steps to product stewardship that are well documented on our website, but where I showed check marks on this slide, Declare directly impacts to ensure our product designs are guided by life cycle assessment, to educate stakeholders about the environmental and health impacts of the entire life cycle of our products, to be on the forefront of extended producer responsibility, to be transparent about the safety and environmental friendliness of our products. Declare really entwines with this extremely well, and we like it because of that. We are featuring Declare in ad campaigns that are really driven by the Declare label, and perhaps you've seen some of those. We blog about Declare as going beyond what's traditionally held as the measure, say, for a LEED building, and we talk about, you know, ingredient disclosure and those types of things. Ingredient disclosure is very important today for a lot of different reasons, and you know, I could talk for a half hour about why it's important, but it really boils down to this bullet list. 90% of life is spent indoors, according to organizations that test indoor air quality. Indoor air can be 10 times worse than outdoor air. 72% of an average person's life is spent indoors, and there are 80,000 untested chemicals in the United States today. And there's no IAQ EPA, meaning, you know, we have this entire multi-billion-dollar bureaucracy that worries about air pollution, but we don't have anything that measures indoor air pollution other than the selection of products. So Walt Disney once said, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. And that's kind of what kick-started our sustainable development at Knauf. And in 2008, we launched one of the nation's largest green chemistry initiatives, and it was known as ECOS technology. And this is a corn-based, and as James mentioned, it is a corn dextrose, which we convert to an inert thermoset adhesive with chemistry and temperature. And we think that this is a great idea, and it's had a really dramatic impact on us. And certainly, if you look at what's happened in the insulation industry, this was obviously the right choice because everybody's trying to do it now. But if you look at the typical impact categories of ECOS technology versus old technology, the old technology being a PF resin, which is the red in the polar diagram, and ECOS being the green. ECOS is significantly better in 5 out of the 6 areas being shown, and it's worse from a eutrophication standpoint. And we would expect that because it is an agricultural-based product where eutrophication is an impact. You know, we have Knauf family farms. We potentially could consider growing our corn someday, sustainably farm it, and reduce that eutrophication impact, and also potentially take advantage of the sequestration associated with growing things from a carbon emission standpoint. So another thing about our sustainable development is we're a very strong advocate for recycling. We're colorblind. It doesn't matter what color glass we put in our process, and that's a real differentiator, and we're out there educating people about the value of recycling. And we recently testified before the Indiana legislature, who just passed a bill levying a 50% recycling mandate, which to me, for a conservative state to recognize recycling is a phenomenal thing. But it's really good business, and I'll tell you why. Alabama also has embraced the concept of potentially recycling as a result of us reopening our plant down there and needing local recycled content. And if you look at glass in general and what ends up going to a landfill, glass is easily, on a mass basis, the most landfilled of the containers that go in a landfill. So it's a resource. You can't call it a natural resource. Maybe it's an unnatural resource. But container bottles make up about 83% of all the glass disposed of in the United States today. And we're using those containers as our primary source. It is our #1 ingredient by a long shot. We go through more than 5 rail cars of post-consumer glass a day taken from the streets of major metros in the United States and some in Canada. And the real advantage of doing this is versus virgin materials have bound water that must be driven off. So as a result of using recycled content, we don't have to drive that moisture off. So for about every 10% of post-consumer glass that we're able to use, we save about 3% melting energy as a result. So, you know, at 60% post-consumer content is where we like to be. You know, we're saving around 20% energy to manufacture or melt the glass that makes up our products. We have environmental product declarations available, and the folks from GreenWizard are going to talk about how to access this type of information. We're very proud of these, encourage you reading them. They're a lot of work. We want to make sure people are using them and know how to use them in the future. Our sustainable development is evident in our annual reports. You can look at our 2010 report. It is what we want to be, then a little bit bolder what we are going to be in 2011, and 2012 is what we are. And the 2013 is really very colloquial, and it gets to a very local sustainability impact assessment, and really starts talking about the social impacts and some really neat case studies. So I encourage you to read it. So I appreciate you listening to me today. That when I do employee outreach about our sustainability to the plant guys, they don't know my name. They call me the beer bottle guy because they think I encourage drinking beer because we're recycling all these bottles, and that's okay with me. So if you're a beer drinker, please partake. And thank you very much for listening. I'll now hand this back.
Great, thanks, Scott. We're going to pass the presenter over to Brent now, and he will continue to talk about GreenWizard.
James, thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Just wanted to go through and start real quickly. As an overview on GreenWizard side, this Living Building Challenge part is an incredible movement. This is really impressive. The numbers that they're showing here on the screen here, 187 projects, over 5 million square feet of building projects currently going underway in this many countries is really impressive. It really speaks to the volumes and the amount of effort that's gone into this and where we now are in the movement and into the industry. What I want to do is how GreenWizard's helping this, and we're obviously very excited to be part of this webinar today. It's really driven by our customers. We think of ourselves as a data repository and the best conduit for this information to get out into the marketplace. The reason being is these are the customers that are using our system, that are using this transparency. Almost all of these are very much behind this transparency movement and driving this forward. So a couple things, and I'm going to show you a live version of this. Instead of PowerPoint slides, I'm going to show you the actual software itself, which is the most impressive part of this. But manufacturers can put this product information into our system 100% free. Anyone that has a declare product label can put this into GreenWizard. They can disclose the chemicals of concern in the application itself. And then I'm going to show you here exactly how the design and construction firms can then utilize this information. We've made it very, very easy to streamline the product search. The splintering of the industry and so much information being placed in so many websites and so many locations is really difficult, and it causes a feasibility issue and a time issue with the building projects themselves. We've tried to streamline that and help the industry in a lot of different ways. Getting to the information very, very quickly has been our core focus of that. So getting down to a product, searching for a product with a declare label, searching for a product that has a chemical that is listed as free of chemicals of concern. As James had mentioned, this becomes a multi-attribute, and everyone really enjoys working together, having HPD and others, cradle to cradle, all being very easy to search for. Getting down to a very granular level, we can refine those searches to specific manufacturers. We can say, if you have a declare label, what other criteria may I be looking for that's valuable to you for research, for you as your project, as you're specifying materials, etc. So with that, I'm going to jump right into the actual demo, and I'm going to jump into our database. So I'm going to close that off. Something I thought was really important to highlight on this call, if you go to GreenWizard's homepage and go to products, down to the product transparency dropdown, we've dedicated an entire page of all of the firms that are backing this disclosure and transparency movement. I think this is a really powerful piece of information. This has now over 30 letters that firms have written directly to the manufacturing community requesting this level of information, that they disclose, full disclosure, transparency, encouraging them to have HPDs, EPDs to get declare labels. This is really important, and this is a really powerful piece, and this really speaks to that notion. I'm going to log into the application, and I'm going to do a couple searches and show you how fast we can get down to this information. Oops, that's not what I want. I'm going to go into there we go, username and password. So I'm going to land basically here on a dashboard, and I want to focus on the search criteria, the database itself. So I'm going to search, and from this page, you've got here right at the top, you can choose one of these options to get down to, and we can provide the data. This is all directly from the manufacturers. So those that have come in and loaded this information is from manufacturers. You have the ability to search your own projects and libraries, but what I want to focus on is right here. Products that are eligible for that have HPDs, EPDs, cradle to cradle, and then these two focusing on today's call is the declare product label and manufacturers that have chosen to disclose chemicals of concern. This is noted here, Living Building Challenge. So very simply, I click on this, I've selected manufacturers. It's going to give us every manufacturer that we currently have in the system that has a declare label listed. You can go in here, and we've got 95 products right at your fingertips. This Knauf product comes right up here at the top. And I can filter this. I can view details. I can look at all the information. You can see their supporting information, product literature, their MSDS sheets. This is the declare label, which we have attached to the actual products. And they also have their corporate sustainability report. I can go in here, click on the details of this particular product. This is all provided directly by Knauf. This is our way of getting this information out into the marketplace. Their detailed and performance attributes, their sustainability attributes. You'll see here pre and post consumer, no formaldehyde off-gassing. They've disclosed their product is free of all chemicals of concern. Manufacturing extraction locations, certifications, labels, declarations that they may include. You see the life cycle impact data. And then again, we can get right to their declare label by clicking on the supporting document. It's attached to this actual product. So when I click on that, it pulls it down right from their product listing, not going out to Knauf's site. They've already placed it in our database. And as James and Scott have already mentioned, this is the actual label attached to the product. So this is an LBC Red List free disclosure. Really, really quick, very easy to get to this information. Now, what we can do here is a couple things. We can actually drop these materials into a project for you guys to manage. You can actually drop the products into a library for your firm. And I'm going to show you both of those aspects, which is really nice here in terms of getting to the information quickly. Filter your results, as I showed on that slide. All of these manufacturers have supporting declare labels. And it'll show the number of products that they also have in the system with those labels. But you'll also see the other influential pieces, certifications and documents that they also contain. So there are products that have both declare labels and EPDs, declare labels and HPDs, cradle-to-cradle certifications, NSF ANSI-140 certifications. So it's really about getting to the level of information that you as a design or construction professional need to find for your project. So what I've done here is what I want to add this material, so as many of our customers are using this, they're compiling this as a research tool, as a product management tool. So we can go in here and add these materials directly to a library that moves it from our GreenWizard database into an account library for your team. What makes that really nice? I'll go to the library aspect, and not only do you have the ways to filter and search by declare and by red list free and chemical information. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to highlight that as well before we get into that. Just as a different component of that to support the red list and information, I'm going to do a secondary search here just for products that are free of all chemicals of concern. They may not have a declare label, but they have disclosed to be chemical free. So I can do a search, and you're going to get a larger subset of that 95 to 100. Now you're going to have over 593 products that have put their products as red list free of the 13 chemicals of concern based on LBC. So you can see here, and if we do that same filter search, you'll see all these manufacturers have put that information down to that granular level. So we can particularly, pick one of these out and then just look at that particular material. So from this point, I want to go to the library and making it very easy for you guys to manage this information. It's constantly changing. It's constantly moving. This is a list of all the materials in my library, but I've actually created custom labels for you, depending on how you want to organize this information. Let me load this up. You'll see labels. I've got LBC contains red list material, LBC compliant, LBC red list, and you can even have products that are declared. So you can actually mark products within your company and track them for these certain requirements. And this is custom for anyone that wants to use it. You can put in your own requirements, labels, etc. But when I do that, I can quickly say, these are the products that I commonly use. I flag them as having a red list tag, and it will pull those products right into your library for you guys to use. Makes it very, very easy. All those of us that have worked on LBC projects, tracking and collecting this information, qualifying the materials that you're using can be very, very time consuming. We want to work with the design and construction side and the materials and manufacturers to bring those two sides together and make this a very, very easy pass off of information. From this point, as you're managing that information, I want to show you how the manufacturer actually discloses that. So if I go here to, I would show you how, this is one of Knauf's products, but I'm going to expand something for you guys. If I go to edit details, this is where the manufacturer can actually put in those data fields If you go down here to the bottom of this listing, we've made it very clear about the chemicals of concern. This product contains one or more of the following chemicals of concern, and you will see these here. This product contains none of the chemicals of concern listed above. This product contains one or more of the chemicals of concern listed, but has given temporary exception, as James had mentioned, based on the LBC's current market limitations. So we're encouraging manufacturers. This is not a required field, but we want to encourage manufacturers to expose the product information at its fullest at 100%. At that level, I just want to show one other piece. This information can then pass directly into your project. So if you're working on a Living Building Challenge project, you can add these materials directly to a project, drop them in the materials, and this becomes an aggregated list of all the information. So let me go to my project, my LBC demo project. And this is a dashboard of all that information. You can move all of the products into a directory listing. This becomes a digital repository for all those products that you've chosen to use, and you can very quickly sort through all the materials. We've actually are launching a V4 criteria piece, which will be launched soon, and there's also a product health metrics report. So all the materials that you're moved in, those Knauf products and others we showed, you can actually see an assessment of how many products you're using in the project that have these different components that you think are valuable. And all the product details lie underneath each one of these products. So everything moving into one particular place. At that level, you've also got additional tools as we're all dealing with Living Building Challenge projects, but I feel like we're running a little short on time, so I wanted to hand it back to James and to Anna, and we should leave some time for Q&A and be able to take some questions.
Thanks, Brett. That was great. We do only have a few minutes, so I was going to ask, go through some of the questions and first ask one to James, send it to James, and Sasha actually has those. Okay.
Hi, James. Okay, so here are the two questions that came in that I thought were pretty pertinent to this webinar. The first one is, for Declare, when will the 99% of Red List compliant declaration exemption expire?
So that's a great question, and I think we could maybe broaden that question to say we have temporary exceptions within the Living Building Challenge based upon market realities. I gave an example of phenol formaldehyde in composite wood. However, in the interior wood products industry, so in cabinetry, etc., there's a new product out by Columbia Forest Products. Well, it's not a new product, it's been on the market for a while, that is completely formaldehyde-free. If there was a company that was able to develop a completely formaldehyde-free composite wood sheet good that could be used for structural purposes, then we would take away that temporary exception. So the exceptions are really built based upon market realities, and as companies innovate, we want to reward them and remove those exceptions to require our products to be using those healthier materials. So the proprietary ingredient allowance of 1%, we think right now is a good balance between what manufacturers need to protect some legitimate trade secrets, as well as disclosing enough information to consumers to allow them to make decisions. So hopefully as the transparency movement goes forward, we can begin to remove that proprietary ingredients exception and require full disclosure in the future.
Great, thank you. And then we have a second, more involved question. Can you clarify whether manufacturers need to get both HPD and Declare, or will having Declare automatically make you an equal to HPD? Also, please let us know how we can utilize the Declare label for our marketing/packaging. Is there a logo to download available for declared manufacturers?
Yeah, so that's another great question, and I think that really the question is sort of, you know, what's the difference between these programs? Which program should we take advantage of? Should we do Declare? Should we do HPD? And I think, you know, each company is going to have to make that determination for themselves which program is most appropriate for them. What I would say, though, is each program starts with building an ingredients list. So if you build an ingredients list to participate in the DECLARE program, participating in HPD is pretty seamless. And actually, you can take that ingredients list you developed and apply that directly to an HPD to develop your own HPD. So, I think that there's different benefits. LBC, or the DECLARE program, really offers a pathway towards LBC projects and a streamlined pathway to connect to those projects, as well as a way to have a graphical representation of your product, or a simple way for specifiers to make decisions using that label. And the second part of the question, where do you get that label from, and how do you download it? If you participate in the DECLARE program, we give you a high-res version of the label. You can put it on product packaging. You can use it on different marketing material, like beer cans that Scott has for Knauf. So we provide you that as a tool and resource that you can use if you participate in the program. And then it's also posted in our database, and then you can go out and post it in GreenWizard and other databases that aggregate this information. Okay, well, I think, so we're only going to take those 2 questions, right, Anna?
We are about to run out of time. We do have one about GreenWizard quickly, if you mind me asking Brent.
Actually, I think maybe we should take that question offline, Anna.
Okay. All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us. This session was recorded, so we'll be able to go back through, and you will receive a link as soon as it's downloaded. So again, thanks for participating. It's definitely a topic that needs to be discussed. So everybody else, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.